fight. Your heart beats fast despite the truth that love is blind. I just wanna feel anything.
Welcome to the Clean and Filthy podcast with your host, Matthew M.
Hello and welcome back to the Clean and Filthy podcast, where we are clean and serene with a filthy mind in between. I am your host, Matthew M., and I am an addict in recovery. Welcome back, everyone. Episode 18. So thankful and grateful to everybody for being here on this journey with us. I'm so excited to be here today. Hopefully everybody had a blessed week. Hopefully if you're in Arizona, you're doing something to stay out of the heat, since we're hitting 117 this week, and it is ridiculous. Like, I remember when I was a kid and I'd be out playing in the streets all summer. I don't know how I did that. Like, I think back at those times, I had to have been like the biggest masochist ever to be just out riding my bike through the oven that is the summers in Arizona and the Southwest in general. So hopefully everybody's staying cool, has your AC working quadruple time like mine is currently. And just welcome for, thank you for being here. I have to say, I knew it was going to happen eventually. And today I'm feeling a little under the weather. I had my son this past weekend. He decided that he didn't want to sleep past 6 a.m. And anybody who knows me knows I don't do too well on no sleep. So I've got a little bit of a scratchy voice. I'm sorry if I sound like a phone sex operator. So I apologize, or you're welcome, depending on your perspective on all that. And like I said, I'm a little under the weather today, but we're going to get through. We're going to press on because we've got episode 18 today. We're going to be talking about tradition number 6. We're going to be talking about my favorite moments of the week. We're going to be answering more of your questions. And we are, of course, going to be giving them clean time shout outs. But before we go any further, we got to give a big thank you to our episode sponsor, Etc. by Emily. All of her information is down in the description below. So if you're looking for a job, or if you're looking for event staffing or party staffing, check her out below. Also, I have to give a huge thank you to Valentino Khan, Alice in Wonderland, and Mad Decent Records for the wonderful song Anything. I get to hear it twice every single episode, and I love it so much. I would love to know how many downloads and streaming, numbers that song has done just from me, because it's been a lot. So I'm just going to say that. Also, before we go any further, we have to give a huge thank you to our VIP supporters. These are the people on Patreon who are helping grow this product with donations. And they are Alex B., Cindy, Stephanie, Shar, Clint, and Alex T. For anybody who's interested in becoming a VIP supporter on this podcast, please head over to Patreon. You can get there easiest by going to www.cleanandfilthypodcast.com and click right there on the top right where all of the social media links are, and you can become a contributor through that. And if you are, then you will get one of these awesome Clean and Filthy podcast stickers sent to you so you can display it and get people knowing what we are and who we are and what we do. What we are and who we do. Whoops. All right. Like I said, I'm a little fuzzy today, but we got the yeet juice. We got a nice cup of tea with some honey in it to soothe my sultry vocal cords, and hopefully it works. So again, thank you everybody for being here. Thank you everybody who's new from Twitter, who's new from Instagram, who maybe is just new in general. If you're here, welcome to the Clean and Filthy podcast. Again, my name is Matthew M. I am an addict, and the Clean and Filthy podcast is a podcast all about 12-step recovery. We are here live on YouTube every single Tuesday at 5 p.m. I apologize. It was 5:02 today because my streaming software decided it didn't want to start the stream. But we are here and we proceed. So if you want to check us out live, head on over to YouTube. Again, all of our information is listed on the website. So you can just head over there, like us on all social media. Make sure to subscribe to our channel on YouTube so you are first to know when we get a new episode live. It'll give you a notification. You can come check it out. And if you're live right now, what up, chat? Hope everybody's out there having a great day, avoiding the heat, not dying of heat stroke. And if you are watching on YouTube right now and you want to help support this channel, please make sure to download this episode wherever you consume podcasts from. Really helps our numbers. They go up, we get more exposure, we help more people. So, got to say that. If you aren't watching on YouTube right now and you're listening on a podcast directory, thank you for checking us out. Hopefully you hear something you like. Hopefully you come back next week and then, continue this whole process. If you are on that podcast directory and you like what you hear, please share us. Maybe throw us a rating, throw us a like. Really helps us, gets to see our growth and really, hopefully, get to that potential that I believe this podcast has, potential to help people. And if you want to partake in the live stream, head on over to YouTube. We have a lot of fun. I love doing the live stream element. We're actually going to talk about that a little bit more later on in this show, about the whole live element and just how much fun it is for me. So thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, everybody, for all of the support, the likes, the comments, the retweets, the shout-outs, all of that. You guys are helping us grow. We couldn't do it without y'all, period. So it's because of y'all that this program is building. It's because of y'all this podcast is building. And I'm really excited to see where things are going to go. So thank you, everyone. Before we get into our first segment, we have to talk about what we are, what we do, what we don't do. Again, my name is Matthew M. This is the Clean and Filthy podcast. I am an addict in recovery, and this podcast is all about 12-step recovery. This is the things that us addicts go through and process through on a daily basis. So if you are in recovery, welcome. If you're not in recovery, welcome. If you use drugs, welcome. If you've never used drugs, welcome. Because the beautiful thing about 12-step recovery is that this isn't about not using drugs. It is about becoming a better human being and finding the ways that we grow and improve our lives. And we do that based on the 12-step recovery model. But I want to make sure to stay in line with the traditions, especially since we're working through the traditions currently. And I will not be speaking from a point of authority or identification from any one specific fellowship. I will not be recommending any one specific treatment center or sober living or recovery residence or anything like that, because I want to make sure to stay in line with the traditions. But if you have questions about how to get to a meeting or what my home group is or what fellowship I work or how to find a sponsor or how to find a recovery residence / sober living, please reach out to me. You can contact me directly at Matthew@CleanAndFilthyPodcast.com. Or you can head on over to the website, www.cleanandfilthypodcast.com, and make sure to send us a message there on our Contact Us page. I am more than happy to discuss those things with you. We just don't discuss them here on the podcast. So if you have questions or there's something more than we discuss here, reach out to me. I love talking to people. Part of the reason I have a podcast, I love talking, and I love being able to help people. Second reason that I have a podcast. So please don't be shy. Reach out to me. I would be more than happy to help however I can. But I just want to make sure that it's clear what we do and don't do on this show. Also, got to give a quick mention that the website is acting up a little bit in terms of new videos and new episodes being uploaded to it. For whatever reason, the last 2 episodes are having issues being uploaded for playback on the website. But there are plenty of other ways to hear our podcast episodes. Again, just go to the website. All of our social media is listed there, and I spam our location for our podcast directory stuff all over social media. So if you have any question or you're having an issue going to the website, there are plenty of other options. And I will be more than happy to direct you to them so that you download the previous episodes. So that's what we do. That's what we don't do. And that's kind of what we're here for. You know, we want to help develop a community around recovery. We want to be able to answer questions. We want to help people. We want to clear up misconceptions and stigma and labels and these things that, you know, for a lot of us addicts are very, very difficult to process through, to work through. And this podcast is an opportunity for all of us to collectively grow together, to change the perception of addiction, to change the stigma of the disease of addiction, and be able to leave the world a better place than we found it. And that, for me, is the ultimate goal. So if you're here for the first time, welcome. Hopefully you hear something you like, and when you do, please share it, please like it, please subscribe to a tweet, retweet, all that, and then come back next week. That's kind of how we do it here. So this is not going to replace going to a meeting or calling your sponsor or doing step work in whatever fellowship you're in. This is just supposed to be an added bonus to recovery. So that's what we do. That's what we don't do. That's who we are. That's who I am. And let's get into our first segment.
Let's head to the lab for some R&D. Recovery and development.
That's right, y'all. We are here in our first segment of the week entitled Recovery and Development. This is the part of the show where we look at different steps, traditions, concepts, or spiritual principles from the 12-step recovery model. We discuss them. We give the background of them. We discuss how us addicts put these into our lives and really how we use them to grow. So if you're not an addict, that's okay. As I always say, the beautiful thing about recovery is that it's not just about not using drugs. It's about becoming a better human being. It's about growing into our full potential. And we do that by working steps and traditions and concepts and implementing those spiritual principles within them into our lives. So we are on tradition number 6. And crazy that we're on to episode 18. I'm still just blown away by that fact. The numbers of downloads, the fact that this is going and it's going well, I am eternally grateful to all of you. So thank you again for the support. But I digress. So traditions, as we discussed before, are the next level of recovery stuff. Episodes 1 through 12, we covered steps 1 through 12. Now, since episode 13 until now, we've been going through the traditions. And just like the steps build on each other, so do the traditions. So if you haven't listened to the last couple episodes, I highly recommend it, especially with Tradition 6, because it goes hand in hand with Tradition 5, and Tradition 5 builds off of Tradition 4, and Tradition 4 builds off of Tradition 3, and so on and so forth. So I highly recommend going back and checking out the previous episodes just so you're up to speed as to what we're talking about. It can at least give some basic information. So I will always say traditions are that next level. They get a little crazy. They take some additional effort in figuring stuff out maybe than we would have previously done in our recoveries. But that's what's fun about it. We get to learn these things and see how they apply, to the fellowship as a whole. Now, as I say, I always want to read the tradition as it says, but because I don't want to identify what fellowship I'm a part of to stay in line with the traditions, I will be using a censor button. So when you hear something go, it's totally expected. So what does Tradition 6 say, you ask? Tradition 6 says, group ought never endorse, finance, or lend the name to any related facility or outside enterprise, lest problems of money, property, or prestige divert us from our primary purpose. Now, primary purpose, we just talked about this last week, right? On episode 17, talked about tradition number 5. If you haven't listened to that, I highly recommend checking it out. But just to give a refresher, what is our primary purpose? Our primary purpose is to carry the message to the addict who still suffers. All right? Now, let's go a little deeper. What is our message? Give a little refresher here. Our message is that an addict, any addict, can stop using, lose the desire to use, and find a new way to live. That's the message. And what's the primary purpose? To carry that message. Very streamlined, very focused, very simple at the end of the day. So I wanted to give that little refresher before we start going into the tradition, just to make sure everybody's, remembering what we've talked about in the past. We always got to look at what the spiritual principles are. What are the spiritual principles that really stand out to me in this tradition? Because there's so many spiritual principles, especially when you get into the traditions that really tie in directly. And these are the ones for me personally that really vibe within this tradition. That's humility. That's vigilance. That's integrity, respect, harmony, anonymity, and unity. I always love saying unity. It always makes me think of that awesome Rick and Morty episode. So we got to look at what is Tradition 6 really for? Well, Tradition 6 allows us as addicts to devote our energy to carrying a clear message to the addict who still suffers. It makes sure that that's what we're doing. It takes the fifth step and it takes the fifth tradition and it makes sure that we're focused in on that fifth tradition. That's the point of the sixth tradition. In a lot of ways, Tradition 6 is kind of similar to Step 10. In Step 10, we did daily inventory and, righted our wrongs. In a lot of ways, especially from a group purpose, that's kind of what Tradition 6 is. Tradition 6 allows us to keep an inventory on our group, as members of that group. And kind of do a daily inventory and kind of see, well, maybe is that, not really falling in line with the traditions? And by doing that, we can spot those potential issues that could lead to diversion from the primary purpose. Because that's the last thing we want. If our primary purpose is to carry the message and anything is diverting us off of that path, off of that trajectory, that's an issue. That's an issue because it's not now being, a clear message isn't being carried. So I want to break down each one of these things. It says, never endorse. All right, well, what does endorse mean? We're heading over to get the Webster's definition here. And it says, to endorse is to publicly or officially say that you support or approve of someone or something, or to publicly say that you like or use a product or service in exchange for money. So the second part of that, we're gonna discuss later on in the traditions. When it comes to attraction versus promotion, identifying Tradition 11, like we talk about. That's why I don't identify what fellowship I'm in to make sure I'm staying in line with the traditions. But there's other things that we need to look at. Especially during the pandemic, a lot of recovery meetings have gone virtually. And especially at larger events, there's things, added into the script that say, while this fellowship is using the Zoom platform or the Teams platform or YouTube platform, as a whole, the fellowship does not endorse this product. The same thing with, when we have big events at hotels or something. It's awesome that we're able to use those locations, but we are not endorsing that location from a fellowship perspective as a whole. All right. Well, what about finance? Okay. Finance definition is to provide funding for a person or enterprise. And we're going to discuss later on about how funds are to be used, but it says that the primary, funds need to be used responsibly, need to be managed responsibly, and used to further the primary purpose. So if the fellowship's out here financing something that's an outside enterprise or financing something that doesn't, fall in line with the primary purpose, then that would be an issue. And then the final one of those three is to lend the fellowship name. Rather than hitting the from now on, each time that there would be a beep, we'll just say the word fellowship. So lend the fellowship name. Well, this can lead to indirect endorsements. This can lead to where there might be some level of cooperation that leads into almost an indirect endorsement. There's something that happened recently at a meeting here in my home area where they became a specific meeting at a recovery center. And the name of the meeting was blank at the whatever. I don't want to endorse any treatment center or whatever, but it was the name of the fellowship included with the name of the treatment center. And in theory, that's great. It's a meeting at a treatment center. That's cool, right? Well, the problem is that when it becomes the name of the fellowship at that treatment center, it seems as though there's an endorsement there. And that can be incredibly detrimental. As a fellowship, we work in conjunction with hospitals, with treatment centers, with therapists, with, probation officers sometimes. There's many different options out there to help addicts. And the fellowship appreciates all of them. But they are not the fellowship. And what if that meeting that is at that treatment center and using the name of the fellowship in its title, what if it comes out that the treatment center actually was, embezzling money or mismedicating patients or, I don't know, murdering cats or something, whatever, some foul stuff that could look bad on the name of the fellowship overall? Those are the type of things that we want to make sure there's separation, because right there, that negative publicity, that negative buildup could lead to a diversion from carrying the message, which is the primary purpose. And cooperation with these other entities is amazing. And it's one of the ways that the fellowship as a whole is able to grow, is able to approach new, groups of addicts, is able to get our message out there to more people. But cooperation does not equal endorsement. And that's where we have to make sure it's very, very clear. Because, as grateful as I am to going to treatment when I did, and as grateful as I am to the people at that treatment center, treatment is not recovery. As grateful as I am to my therapist who helped get me into that treatment center and helped get me into recovery, that's not recovery. That's not the fellowship recovery aspect of it. That's part of the reason why, as a fellowship, we'll take meetings into places, it's called H&I, hospitals and institutions, so that there is that separation. It's not this meeting, it's not this hospital's meeting. It is a meeting of the fellowship that is being brought into that hospital or that treatment center to make sure that there's separation. Because if there's not, the whole notion of the meeting, of the group, might become diverted. The entire thought process might become diverted. When an H&I meeting goes into a hospital or a treatment center, they will specify, we are here operating from this fellowship. We do not endorse or finance this treatment center, because we want to make sure that there is that clarity. Same thing with churches. A lot of meetings are in churches, but that is simply a meeting place. That's not meaning that they endorse that location, that church location. And that can also tie in when you have a lot of recovery clubhouses, the North Scottsdale Fellowship Club, which is, where my home group is located. And that fellowship club is an awesome place for there to be recovery meetings, but it is not the fellowship. It's not this fellowship clubhouse. It is simply a clubhouse for recovery that a lot of different fellowships will meet at. And again, it's not to say that, I'm not grateful for every single one of these different things on the list, because I am. Because all of these things working in cooperation allows the fellowship to grow and allows the message to be carried to more. Again, primary purpose. But we just have to make sure to differentiate that fact. so that we can protect the primary purpose. It's like I, as I've talked about before, I do outside work with a therapist. And while I'm more than happy to talk about that, I'm not going to share that in a meeting and say, oh, hey, by the way, call my therapist, because I'm not carrying a clear message. I'm then, endorsing an outside enterprise. And, while it is beautiful that there is this cooperation, whenever our focus goes to another organization or a church or a outside source of help or a job or whatever, anytime that happens, the potential for our message to get diverted occurs. So you might be asking, like, well, why does this really even matter, right? Well, it says in the literature, it says tradition 6 suggests that the things that divert us are mostly those we use to feed self-obsession. So this tradition reminds us to stay focused, both from a group perspective and from a member perspective. When I'm looking at this tradition, I know that I need to make sure that all of the things outside of carrying the message, outside of the primary purpose, can be distractions. They can lead to divertment. And when the message isn't clear, it can easily get diverted. That is something that can happen. And that's part of the reason, we've talked about this before, of using the correct language, respecting the language of a specific fellowship, respecting the literature of a fellowship, not reading outside, literature. If you're in if that's why, I totally understand a lot of people are very religious and have gained a ton of spirituality and been able to benefit from religion. But opening up a Bible and reading it inside of a specific fellowship meeting, that goes against this tradition. Talking about another fellowship goes against this tradition. That's why it's so important to people within a fellowship to mention, this is how we do it in this fellowship. And it's because, at the end of the day, it says in the literature, a simple, clear message delivered honestly and without any confusion or controversy saves lives. Again, it isn't people trying to be dicks. It's the fact that people are trying to save lives. That's why some fellowships, there is a fellowship that specifically says, keep it in the cup. The only thing you're allowed to share about in that fellowship is that one drug, the liquid drug. And that's fine, because that is their clear message. That is their clear message. So in their meetings, using their specific language or sharing in the way that their traditions say is what we as recovering, members of recovery should be doing. The same thing if you go to another fellowship that uses specific language and identifies in a specific way. It's an act of respect. It's an act of respect and helping to contribute to carrying a clear message that isn't diverted by outside, interest or other fellowships or something like that. So again, when members become vigilant or correct people, it's not to be a dick. It's about following traditions and potentially saving lives. And I'll admit, when I was a newcomer and somebody, in my mind, rudely informed me of tradition stuff, I caught a resentment. Looking back on it, it wasn't rude. It wasn't any reason for a resentment. It was, just that member trying to protect the traditions within that meeting. And, me with almost no time, not understanding that this respect of the language, this respect of the traditions is so vital. In that time, I was just like, man, this guy's a fucking dick. I'm never going here again. Formulating resentments immediately when it just that really doesn't serve anybody, myself included. But again, that's why we, talk about having fellowship approved literature, not reading one fellowship's literature in another fellowship, not having speakers from one fellowship come and speak in another fellowship, or having speakers who aren't members sharing for that fellowship. That's just not what we do, because as awesome as it would be to have some amazing public speaker come in and give some rousing topic, that's not a clear message for the fellowship. It's just not. It's physically impossible for it to be. And again, this isn't about uniformity. This is about unity, not uniformity. I know it sounds like there's these rules and there's these guidelines and this and that, and, so much of what we've talked about in the traditions up to this point is, however you carry the message is how you carry the message. As long as you're carrying the message, you're good. Well, yes, but you also have to be clear as to what that message is and how clear that message is. Because if the message is confused, if it's a confusing message, if it's an uninformed message, then that could be detrimental. That could be damaging to the fellowship as a whole. And we have to watch for those things. And I get it. There are some people out there, and I mean, especially, I've been friends with a lot of them, especially in early recovery. It's like, I go to whatever meetings, all recovery is all recovery. It's all the same. Language doesn't matter. How I identify doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. And I get that to some people it doesn't matter. Some people don't care about this level of recovery, this level of tradition stuff. And I mean, like I said, it's a deeper layer. But it does matter. What makes each one of the fellowships different is what contributes to the clarity of the message. So while some people, don't care that there's differences, some people are like, whatever, it's all the same. I went to a meeting. What meeting? I don't know. It was a meeting. While some people have that perspective, at the end of the day, the differences are what make each fellowship have its clarity in its message. So that's something, I want to mention, because I know some people will say like, well, wow, that person like yelled at me because I said that word. And I admit sometimes, myself included, I can get a little self-righteous when somebody maybe says a word that doesn't fall in line with the clear message of my fellowship, or somebody does something that doesn't fall in line with the message of my fellowship. I can get a little jumpy. And it's not because I'm trying to be a dick. It's because this program, this fellowship saved my life because I heard a clear message of it. And maybe if I hadn't heard a clear message, I would still be sitting here today. Maybe. Or maybe I wouldn't. Maybe the fact that I was able to hear that clear message is the reason why I'm sitting here. And so it would be a disservice to future addicts if I don't try to carry that clear message as well. Again, I know it sounds kind of dickish. It's kind of like but it is important. It really is. Because it says in the literature, it says, we have a message and our purpose is to carry it. Anything else is a distraction or a diversion. Again, this ties right in with tradition 5. They go so hand in hand. This is almost like 5A. It's like you can do 5, and then it's like 5.5 goes here. Technically it's tradition 6, but the thought process behind it. Because tradition 5 tells us our primary purpose is to carry the message to the addict who still suffers. Period. That's it. Now tradition 6 says, okay, now that's still the primary purpose, but watch out for all this other shit. Watch out for all these other potential trappings that could just fuck shit up and just make everything go left. That's what tradition 6 does. And it's part of the reason, that we want to operate from a perspective of attraction rather than promotion. Because when you get into promotion and endorsements and things like that, it can really muddy the waters. There was a something that occurred over this last year that was incredible to me, like the fact that it occurred. And it was a member of the fellowship was celebrating a substantial amount of clean time. And this member is also a movie star. And the flyer for the meeting said, come celebrate this member's name with his picture, and then said the star of blank movie. Like, that is the essence of trying to get prestige. That is the essence of trying to make your group look cool. Because, hey, we've got this celebrity. And that was shared on social media. I don't understand like how that could have ever been approved, because that is like a blatant violation of multiple traditions. But it still happens. And even though like something like that, like there's this part of me that says like, yeah, but maybe some addicts would see that and be like, hey, he's there, I'm going to go there. But that's not how the fellowship works. It's not about trying to be a popularity contest or, I mean, it's an anonymous program, for fuck's sake. It's not about doing that. It's about showing how we live, showing that recovery is possible, showing that the message of recovery works, that this addict sitting right here shows that the message of recovery works. And that is my primary purpose. My primary purpose isn't to bring a bunch of people in. My primary purpose isn't to get more members for my home group. My primary purpose isn't to have the nicest meeting hall or put on the best events or serve the nicest refreshments. None of those things are the primary purpose. And even things that, potentially could be fun, or maybe get the message out to more addicts. It leads to diversion. Like, as much as I would love for it to be like our regional convention is sponsored by Lamborghini, and, we out here endorsing with a fellowship model Aventador, as amazing as that would be to me, that is a blatant violation of the traditions. That is a blatant violation of what our primary purpose is. Our primary purpose isn't to be the flashiest fellowship or have the dopest ass shit or have the most beautiful women or beautiful men or who drives the nicest cars. No, it's to carry the message to the addict who still suffers. That's it. So I would love it if there was like a co-branding partnership with Marvel. That would be cool, but it wouldn't follow the traditions. So as cool as this random addict thinks it would be, it would not follow the traditions. And the traditions are important so that diversion doesn't happen.
That part.
Yeah. So that's why we have to make sure that first and foremost is carrying that message is our primary purpose. Please hold my throat. All right, we're back. Sorry about that. I apologize. My throat was getting scratchy, and I didn't want to go to a 900 number on y'all. Not yet, at least. All right, digressing. We also need to look at the things that could pop up, and lead to the desire for prestige, for money, for power, for fame, all of these stereotypical things that boost egos. We have to avoid pride. We have to avoid this concern with the perception by others or insecurity. Looking at my home group has 50 members, and we have 15 members with over 40 years clean. Yeah, who gives a fuck? Who fucking cares? Is the message being carried to the addict who still suffers? Good? Yes? All right. All that other shit is trivial. Yet a lot of times a group's enthusiasm can lead to arrogance. You'll hear some groups will say like, yeah, we're the best home group in the world. It says directly in the literature. It quotes that. It quotes groups saying that as being potentially divisive. And even though it's meant lovingly and jokingly and like, yeah, my home group's the best. My home group could beat you up your home group. It's still, at the end of the day, could be divisive. So like that can lead to this thought of, okay, well, we say we're the best, so we're going to outdo the other groups. We're going to hold the best dance at the best party with the best DJ with the best. None of that matters. All of that is trivial. At the end of the day, every home group is there, as we talked about, from a perspective of autonomy, to develop a safe location to carry that message to the addict who still suffers. Nothing else matters. Doesn't matter how cool you are. Doesn't matter how nice your clothes are, how nice your car is, how hot the dudes are that walk in there, how beautiful the women are. None of that matters. And sometimes that gets forgotten. I've been to home groups where, it's almost like kind of a show. It's like, yeah, look at how nice we are. And I don't vibe with that. Granted, this was back when I was in Las Vegas in treatment early on. And maybe it was my own perception of it. I don't know. But all I know is that, in my opinion, does not line up with the traditions. And it is vital that all the members of a group are vigilant and on the watch for these things. It says in the literature, it says, if we wait until diversions create a problem, we tend to experience our traditions as things we argue about rather than as principles that help us carry the message and recover in unity. And this is so true. I mean, somewhat unrelated, but this is the exact thing that's happened many times in a business meeting. Where traditions are kind of overlooked for a second or, ignored, and then they become something at a business meeting that get argued over. If we all are being vigilant and making sure to make a checks and balance system within the home group, we have less worry of something going badly to the point, and now we're arguing over traditions instead of discussing how to, employ them within the home group. So, excuse me. And while the traditions do directly address the group, there's also ties to individual members. Members can be easily diverted by money, property, and prestige. This is why humility and anonymity are so vital within the program, within the home group, within service structure. Because, there can be that feeling of power a little bit, that feeling of ego, for myself included. Saying things like my meeting, my service position. When we do that, we're allowing ego to edge out humility completely. And that is a recipe for disaster, potentially. That is a recipe to our message being diverted. And again, this is something that, is a balance at times. Personally, I just took on and am about to take on a new service position within my area. And yeah, there's a little feeling of like, yeah, that's right. Cool. But it's not my position. I'm simply a trusted servant who's operating in this service position. And it's not because I want to be cool. It's not because I want to be popular. Again, this is an anonymous program. How are you going to be the coolest, most popular motherfucker in an anonymous program, bruh? So it's not for that reason. It's for the reason that I believe I can serve well in this position and help carry the message, help fulfill the primary purpose, just like the message was carried to me. So tradition 6, it really builds off of, tradition 5. Tradition 7 really builds off of tradition 6. So please make sure to have gone back and listened to all of the previous episodes of the Clean and Filthy podcast to make sure you are all caught up before we get into next week on tradition 7. I'm going to close with this quote. There's so many amazing quotes that I can quote from the literature, especially to close up, but I want to quote this one because this speaks so perfectly to the 6th tradition. And it says, when we resist the impulse to get diverted, to wander off course, we are present for the miracle. The life we save might be our own.
That part.
Yeah.
That part.
So that's what we've got for this week's episode on recovery and development, our first segment of this episode. Next week, like I said, we're going to be going into Tradition 7. Tradition 7 has a lot of important elements in terms of keeping groups themselves and being able to have that ownership over their autonomy. But we will get into that, obviously, next week. Now it's time to get into our next segment of the show entitled My Favorite Moment of the Week. Again, I do not have a sponsor by Bang for this segment yet. I should, since If you're watching me on YouTube right now, I am drinking a delicious key lime flavored Bang energy drink. Bang, please sponsor me. It'll be very cheap, probably a case or two of Bang a month. I'll give you a shout out. If you're not watching, I'm currently drinking a Bang energy drink, soon to be sponsored. All right, so this part of the show is where I like to look at something that has occurred over the last week. And it might be something from sports or news or pop culture or Instagram or TikTok or just something that happened in my life that was fun, that I liked. It was supposed to be my favorite moment. I am way too indecisive to have a favorite moment, so we talk about a bunch of stuff. This is the week roundup with yours truly. Again, this is my opinion. There's some experience, strength, and hope, but it's a lot of my opinion. So realize that this part is for me. And hey, hopefully y'all had some of the same favorite moments as well. If you guys had an awesome favorite moment, saw something amazing on Instagram or Twitter or something, send it over to me on any social media platform and check it out. Maybe it'll get into the show. So, first off, it's going to be on here every week. We got to talk about playoff basketball, y'all. Playoff basketball doing things. This has been some of the most exciting playoff basketball I can remember in a while. All of the series are pretty damn competitive. Philadelphia went in to Atlanta and won for the first time anybody's won in Atlanta in like 2 months. But then Atlanta came back, tied it up. Best of 3 series now. Tied up 2-2. Who's going to win 2 out of the 3 next games? I'm going to say Philadelphia. That's what I'm going with. Next up, Clippers. They woke up at the Jazz. Won the last 2 games. Now that series is 2-2. Who am I picking? I'm picking the Jazz, but we're going to discuss this a little bit more, a little bit further. Next up, the Bucks. After getting lambasted, flambéed, fucking slap-chopped out of existence in the first 2 games, now all of a sudden it's a 2-2 series. A lot of that very well has to do with injury. I said before, I think the Nets are going to win it all. Because even if they have one of their people out, they still got 2 other. Well, now they've got 2 out, and they've just got 1. Changes a lot. But I'm still going to pick the Nets, since that series is also 2-2. I'm still going to pick the Nets. But now we got to get to the best part of playoff basketball. And that's the Suns swept the Nuggets. Yeah. Beautiful, well done, Phoenix. Love it, love it, love it, love it. It is amazing, the vibe of playoff basketball. It's been a long time for a lot of us, and to have that vibe back feels amazing. Flat out, CP3 is a magician. I know some people don't like CP3, but he's a magician. Booker is ridiculous. We got to talk about the closeout game with the Joker's flagrant 2 foul. Personally, I was talking to one of my buddies about this. I don't think it should have been a flagrant 2 because it's a closeout game in the NBA. But the way he wound back, like, what did the 5 fingers say to the face? Slap at that ball. Yeah, that was a bad look. He looked like he was going, like, all the way back. Just, yeah. Yeah, so, it was a bad optic. Regardless, I don't think the Nuggets would have won, though they still ended up making it a game at the end there. But the Suns sweep, got the brooms out, we sweeping. That's right, beautiful. Now, question: who would I rather the Suns play? Would I rather they play the Jazz or the Clippers in the Western Conference Finals? And I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of people about this, and it is a very difficult thought process for me because in the regular season, the Suns beat the Jazz 3-0. Granted, one of the games, both Spida and Conley were out, but still, they won 3 games. I only went 1-2 versus the Clippers. And even though Utah has the Defensive Player of the Year with Rudy Gobert, the Eiffel Tower, the Clippers overall are a better defensive team. And there's just that Kawhi factor that at any time Kawhi can just be ridiculous and drop 50 in the most unassuming Terminator kind of way. And every so often playoff P, Paul George decides to not shoot 4 for 24 and has a good game. And Patrick Beverley's always just fucking annoying on defense. So for that reason, as much as Donovan Mitchell terrifies me, I also really like Donovan Mitchell. I really vibe with him as a player. But I'm going to go with the Jazz. I think that I would rather play the Jazz. Even though they are the number 1 seed, even though we won't have home court, I really do think that overall the Clippers are a better defensive team. I think that even though the Jazz have amazing three-point shooters that could get hot and just blow us out of the water, I think that the Suns' ball movement will work better against the lesser Jazz defense, personally. That's what we got for playoff basketball. Next week, we'll have more. This is the weekly sports minute right here. I feel like I should get Keith Olbermann or something on the show, or Dan Patrick, to do that little segment with me. Next up, we got to talk about the gym, because, y'all, I had an amazing couple days at the gym. I had a push day, which is chest and triceps and shoulders. That went for like almost 4 hours. I did 100-pound flat, actually 110-pound flat dumbbell presses. I did 205 on the incline. I'm pretty sure that somebody like snuck into my condo and injected me with a shot of Tren and D-ball or something, because I don't know where that strength came from, but it was amazing. Also, yesterday, my legs is dying. I'm walking around super hobbled because I'm officially back in the quadruple digit club on leg press. I put up 1,000 pounds, which is one of the greatest feelings of my gymming career. I've technically done more than that, but I'm getting back. I also did an 8-plate sled push. I'm paying for it today, but in the moment, it was amazing. Found a new pre-workout that, while it has a very triggering name, it is actually pretty beneficial and doesn't have any of the substance that it's named after, thankfully. We got to talk about Loki, because we got Disney Plus MCU shows. How could we not? Anybody who knows anything about me knows we ride for Marvel on this podcast. It's not a Marvel podcast, but we ride for Marvel. Loki was fire. So happy that there's a show back. I will say the first episode I was slightly underwhelmed with for most of it. The setup, it was mainly a setup episode. The one thing that annoys me, and it's a fact of any time that there is a new powerful superhero or group or whatever, is how do you retcon the story to explain why we never heard of them? So how have we never heard about the Time Variance Authority? Like, you're telling me that throughout all time of the MCU that nothing's been out of time? Like, come on. But I get it. The same thing they had to do with Captain Marvel. It's like one of the most powerful characters in the history of the MCU. Where was she during the Avengers or Age of Ultron? So I get it that that's part of the reality of what we have to do, because this whole MCU build-up process has not been pre-planned out 20 years ago. It's been developing. So I get that. One huge thing about this show that I loved, and I didn't even realize it at first, but the tie-in to Kang the Conqueror. He's one of the 3 original timekeepers. And I didn't realize that at all. It's one of those things that was beyond my comic book knowledge. I was already excited that Jonathan Majors from Lovecraft Country is going to play Kang the Conqueror in Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. But I did not know that he was a timekeeper. So that's exciting. I love when they have those inner mixed things. I'm not going to spoiler alert anything. The ending I absolutely loved, and how they had dropped hints building up to that the whole time, but I'm not going to spoil the ending. Loved the fact that at one point there was just a pile of Infinity Stones sitting around, and the D.B. Cooper scene was fire. That shit was fire. So well done. Also, my favorite meme that came out of that was a Wedding Crashers poster with, Owen Wilson standing there, and then instead of Vince Vaughn, it's Loki holding the Tesseract, and it says Time Crashers. Very well done. Very well done. That's all we're going to talk about on that. Also had a fun experience. I'm currently dog sitting, and amazingly, she hasn't barked this whole time. And by dog sitting, I also ended up getting access to an Xbox that I haven't played Xbox since Xbox 360. And it felt really fun to get back on the sticks and get absolutely obliterated. And it kind of was weird because nobody was like screaming obscenities at me and telling me that they were going to like fuck my mother or like, like murder my family or anything. It was kind of weird. So I don't know if like I was just not in the correct lobbies or if all of the 14-year-olds are too busy streaming live on Twitch and screaming at like Ninja and, Dead Mouse or whatever. I don't know. It was fun though. I'm horrible, but it was fun. Got a crazy thing. UFC 236 was here in Arizona and I didn't even realize it. Like I've been so used to being in the pandemic and like, locked down. I didn't even think about the fact that, hey, big events are coming back to town. So if I would have known, I would have gotten tickets because I love Izzy. Didn't get to watch the episode, or didn't get to watch the event, so I'm not going to comment too much on it because I like to comment on things that I've actually seen the full amount of, not just clips on Twitter, but shout out Izzy, retained title, hooray. Big shout out, though, to Brandon Moreno for winning the flyweight title. His first fight against Figueiredo was classic, and I still haven't gotten to see all of this one yet, so well done for him. In this week's news of TikTok news, still not doing this as an official segment because I'm still not on TikTok. But from the world of TikTok, huge shout out to Daniel Mack. If you are anywhere on social media, you have seen Daniel Mack. He is the dude who walks up to people driving supercars and says, "Hey, nice car. What do you do for a living?" Which is such a basic ass concept. And it's cool because he likes cars, so I vibe with that. And he's turned that into a complete platform to the point that he just, in about a year, he had been previously driving an old Chevy. He just bought a Tesla in cash by walking up to people and saying, "Hey, what do you do for a living? Hey, did you graduate high school? What was your GPA?" And some of them are really funny. He's had some really funny interactions, and he's had some people who are just like, "I'm this. Cool. I'm this. Cool." The one guy was a porn music producer. Shout out to him. Yeah, he shout out to that dude. But shout out to Daniel Mack. I enjoy your content. He will be the third person that I follow on TikTok I keep trying to say if and it keeps saying when. I am on TikTok. But I'm not on TikTok yet. I will be on Pornhub before I am on TikTok. That part. So my actual favorite moment of the week, and this is just for me, for the record. I don't know if this will vibe with anybody out there listening, but for me, it was amazing. It didn't occur until this morning at midnight. Anybody who knows me, is around me for any length of time, knows I love playing a game on my phone called Marvel Strike Force. It's a mobile game, but you can also play it on your computer. Launched back in March of 2018. I got into it like a little bit after that, and it was something that really kind of like exemplified my early recovery. In a lot of ways, it was something that helped me, like through boredom, because one of my issues, with using was always boredom. And I had this game to play, and it's a character collector strategy, turn-based strategy, RPG style. You unlock characters, you boost their stats, you use them in different game modes. Now, there's a bunch of different game modes, and it's fun, right? They are very profitable. They been around, like I said, since 2018. They made $150 million the first year, and they made $300 million a year this last year in 2020 with an average gameplay of 2 hours per person. They've got almost 500,000 users from the last estimate that I saw. It's a big community. It's cool because it's Marvel, so it's deeply tied into the MCU. There's like crossover events, which are super cool. Like right now in the game, they've got a special skin for Loki because of the Loki episode. They had the same thing with WandaVision. I actually from the first before Captain America and Winter Soldier and Falcon and the Winter Soldier launched, I already knew where it was going to end up because they accidentally teased a phrasing of Sam Wilson as Captain America. I mean, I think we all knew where it was going to go, but I had confirmation from that. It even goes deeper into some places. Oof.
Phrasing?
Yeah. Places that I didn't even ever go into before. Deep levels within the comics is what I'm referring to. There are characters that I've, unlocked that I don't even know who the hell they are. Had to go do some research. And anybody who's hung out with me knows that at 6 p.m., I need to pull up my phone and I need to claim my energy. I love this game. It's a lot of fun. And never since my old days of playing COD, Modern Warfare, did I get into a video game. And what I like about this is that you can pretty much get whatever you want to out of it. There's some people who are like super casual players who just play when they have time. And then there's people who are addicts who spent the last year trapped inside of their house who do nothing but sit on this game. Okay, I do a little bit more than nothing. But I play this game a lot. And I have out of the 191 characters in the game, I have 189 of them, whatever. The thing with it is there's always something more to do. It's one of those things that's great for an addict like me because there's always what's next. What's next? As my son constantly says, what's next? What's next? What's next, Daddy? Yeah, well, there's always something to do. And it's cool, I'm part of an alliance and we are all across the world and I don't know any of these people in real life. I don't follow them on social media. We just talk about this game. And it's fun. It's this fun community element of it, and using Discord and communicating strategy and that's literally why I first started getting into Twitch during the pandemic. There are people that play this game and live stream it and make good money. There are also people who have dumped hundreds of thousands of dollars into this game to be one of the first people to, do different things, to get new characters. And for me, that's where I first fell in love with this whole live streaming option. That's why we live stream this podcast, is because of watching content creators on Twitch playing Marvel Strike Force. And it's not even about watching them playing the game as much as it's about discussing strategy and feeling a part of. And I know it feels dumb to be yeah, I feel a part of with a bunch of random people I've never met, probably never will meet, and we simply play the same mobile game. I get it. To some people that sounds stupid as fuck. I understand that. But it also is fun. And at the end of the day, if I have something that can be fun in my life, fuck it. Let's go. It's something that is enjoyable, that really helped out in my early recovery and in the pandemic. I mean, it's cool. And something really cool happened. So, since I was saying, there's always something new to do. There's always something, the next thing to progress towards. The newest thing in there was called Dark Dimension 4. And this shit was hard. It was hard. Not many people could get into it. The only people who could get into it is you spend a ton of money or you grinded for resources. And I grinded for resources for 3-4 months, and then I got into it. And then after 93 days, I officially beat it and unlocked Dr. Doom. And I know nobody out there understands the importance of that or how amazing that is. And I don't care. Just like nobody cares that I was dancing around my fucking condo last night, wilding out when I unlocked him. I get that. Guess what? This part of the show is for me. Me. And I'm excited about that. Dr. Doom. Yes. I was officially number 10,870 in the world to get him. I could have been a lot quicker, but I wasn't paying to get him. I was not willing to dump money into it to simply be one of the first people to get him. But now I have him, and it's amazing. And that part of this show might have lost all of my viewers. And if so, that sucks. But hopefully, it inspired some people to get out there and play Marvel Strike Force. And if you do, holla at your boy. We can get an alliance. We can go just murk them other tunes. All right. So, I really wasn't going to go there on this part of the show because, really, who cares about my mobile game? But I do, and it was my favorite moment of the week. So, that's what we're going with. Hopefully, I didn't lose everybody. If I did, I'm sorry. Come back next week. I promise we won't talk about Marvel Strike Force. I promise. I promise. Just stick around. So, that's what we have for my favorite moment of the week. If you have anything that pops up that you want to send my way, make sure to either email it to me, Matthew@CleanAndFilthyPodcast.com, or send it on any of the social medias. I'm on all of them. Going to be on Discord for the podcast here soon. I'm already on Discord, so we're going to set that up. And, maybe we'll talk about it next week. So, now let's get into our next segment after that absolute monologue about something that nobody probably cares about.
It's time to Ask an Addict with your host, Matthew M.
That's right. In our third segment of the show entitled Ask an Addict. This addict, the resident addict of the Clean and Filthy podcast, answers questions submitted by listeners and viewers, just giving an addict's perspective. Again, I'm going to share my experience, strength, and hope, but I'm also going to be giving some of my opinion. I'll make sure to point that out, while we do it. If you have any questions that you would like to have answered on air, please make sure to send them over to Matthew at CleanAndFilthyPodcast.com, and they might be answered on air. So the first question we had, and also before we get into the questions don't have to be recovery related. They can be, but they don't have to be. So ask away. This is like a Reddit AMA, ask me anything. First question says, why does only one form of recovery not work for everyone? And there are multiple layers to this. There's multiple layers to this between different fellowships. There's multiple layers between, the 12-step model. There's different, there's levels to this within the group autonomy itself. Some groups are going to be more attractive to some people. Some people, the 12-step model is going to be more attractive and will work than others. But the thing is there are other options. This podcast is focused on the 12-step model because that's what I have experience, strength, and hope with. But there are a lot of other things out there, that are like non-12-step models, or like smart recovery, or drug replacement, or harm reduction, or religion. All these things that are becoming like more and more popular over the recent time. And maybe they work, I don't know. But I know for me personally, the 12-step model is what has worked and continues to work. But that's not everybody's story. Everybody isn't going to recover the same way that I do. And I'm not saying that those other ways aren't beneficial. I'm not saying those other ways might actually work. I don't know. I don't have experience with them. One of the biggest things lately is this whole not identifying as an addict and not talking about the disease of addiction because that has a shame to it and has a label to it. And to me, I don't get that. I'm an addict. That's what I am. It's not a bad thing. That's just a life thing. It's just all that means is that there's certain things in my life that I need to focus on. To recovery being first and foremost. When people say oh, I don't want to be labeled as an addict or as an alcoholic. I don't want to have the disease of addiction. I mean, I get it, but I also don't get it. Because for me, being an addict, it's not like this personality defining trait. It's like if I was an athlete or if I'm analytical or being a free thinker. Each one, if somebody's an athlete, they're going to approach a situation differently than somebody who's not an athlete. The same way that I'm an addict, I approach a situation differently than somebody who's not an addict. But that doesn't mean that I'm have shame because of it. And I know that is something that's different for a lot of people's stories. And that is one of the biggest reasons why there isn't just a one-size-fits-all for recovery. What works for somebody's recovery, might be vastly different than what works for mine. And so all I can really share about is my personal experience, strength, and hope, and the 12-step recovery, 12-step, fellowship recovery model. That might not be somebody else's story, and that's okay. If it helps them, more power to you. At the end of the day, all I care about is people, getting help and people being able to grow as human beings. So, the 12-step model is not going to be for everyone. And how, somebody works their own 12-step program might not be the same as somebody else. But as long as they're working something that works, that's what matters. That's the most important thing. So, next question we have is, what is my goal of working out? And we talk about working out a lot on this program because it's something that's really important in my life. It's something that's been a constant struggle for me through a lot of my life. Back in the day when I was younger, I was always athletic, so I was always in decent shape. But I was never I never really competitively worked out. I wasn't I'm in a football league, so we're going to go work out beforehand. I wasn't playing high school basketball with trips to the weight room. So I didn't really get involved with serious training until, I was probably 23 or 24-ish around that time. And that's when I started training mixed martial arts. I started doing, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I started doing Muay Thai, and really then developed the whole workout regimen and going to the gym. And, for a while that was working pretty well. I never got like, super yoked looking like Terry Crews in this motherfucker or anything, but I was feeling pretty good about it, and I was, I wasn't perfectly happy, but it was all right. And then I got injured. I ended up having to have back surgery. And in the span of, that time being flat on my stomach, I put on a lot of weight. And when you add in the fact that, I already had been using a lot of opioids prior to my injury, and then I get injured and I'm using even more. And I ended up using, I was already using, so using drugs was no longer my go-to, my escape, because that was just part of normal life at that point. So then it became using food as an escape. And I ended up getting up to like 200, I believe it was either 287 or 298 pounds. I don't remember which, because I was really high, but it was one or the other, and it was almost 300 pounds. And, using food, I remember like when I was injured, I would just lay on my couch and I would make orders from Safeway.com, and I would order like 10, 12 packs of soda, like 4 pumpkin pies, but there would be a stack of pizza boxes. It was ridiculous. But that's what I used in that moment. And because of that, like I said, I got up to almost 300 pounds. So I've got stretch marks, and I've got areas of fat that I don't know if they'll ever go away, and that's just a reality. And, then like once the injury was fixed, I moved to Vegas. I started working out a lot more and was still using a ton, but was working out and watching my diet a little bit more, and ended up, dropping a lot of the weight. I ended up getting all the way down to just under 200 pounds. I remember I got to 198. I think that's what it was. I got to 287 and 198. And it was cool. It was like, all right, bet. And then I just stopped working out. Meth really led to not working out much. It's very difficult to keep a routine when you're up for multiple days. It's very difficult to keep a routine when, all that matters is finding ways and means to get more. And eventually, I didn't have money, so my gym membership got canceled, and I didn't care. And then I kind of had like that skinny fat vibe, to where like I wasn't like, big, but I also wasn't, in shape. Still had stomach and sides like I do now. So I ended up going to treatment at about 215 pounds, and I left treatment at about 250 pounds. That's what happens when you go from eating once every 3 days to eating like 5 meals a day. So I ballooned up a lot there, and now have been, trying to work that back down. Had gotten all the way back down to 205. Then the quarantine happened, and that quarantine 15 was actually more like 30 to me. So I'm currently about 220 to 225 pounds, depending on how well I follow my diet or how often I decide to throw it all out the fucking window and get a Domino's. But now is where I'm really looking at what I'm trying to do, because I really should be focusing on just cutting, lose the fat first and work on building the muscle. The problem is that I don't like doing cardio and I don't like doing abs. So how am I going to do that? So I'm kind of doing this weird, like, yeah, I'm going to do cardio, but I'm also going to keep lifting heavy, because lifting heavy is the thing that feels the best at the gym. So I really got to say, like, what is my absolute, goal is, before I would have said, my goal, and I was so egotistical back in the day with what I wanted my thought process to be with how I looked. I would literally say back in the day, I'd be like, I want to be the dude that when I walk into the room, every girl gets turned on and every dude gets turned on. They all want to fuck me. That's what I want. That was literally, people who know me back in the day, that was literally what I said. Because I was so egotistical and I was so focused on outside things making me feel good. Where now, I just want to feel good for me. Because at the end of the day, no matter how good I look, no matter how perfectly chiseled, sculpted I'm going to be, there's always going to be somebody who's better looking, who's stronger, who's bigger, who's more chiseled, has nicer cum gutters, whatever it is, there's always going to be somebody out there. But if I'm good with me, then all that shit doesn't matter. all that shit doesn't matter to me. So while I would say, like, now my physical goal, there's a picture of Channing Tatum standing in a shower. It's a total thirst trap picture on Google. Something like that. Except he doesn't have that great legs, so maybe I'd want to develop my legs a little more. I don't know. All I know is I want to feel comfortable with who I am. I want to be able to just take my shirt off and be like, yeah, whatever. And I'd love to have a six-pack, but I got stretch marks and I got loose skin, and I don't know if it's even going to be a possible thing. I don't know. But we going to find out. You know, I've been thinking about actually doing some type of element to this where we, you know, kind of do this together. Because I know a lot of people struggle with this. A lot of people struggle in a lot of ways like I did with food or with soda or with eating our feelings away. You know, and that still can be my go-to a lot of times. There's still so many days, so many Tuesdays after I record this podcast, I'm like, I did well. I should go get Habit Burger. Motherfucker, why are you using food to reward yourself? That's not healthy. That's not a healthy type of thing. You know, and if, like, that's something that I still struggle with. You know, that's still something that I struggle with. But at the end of the day, I want to be healthy. I want to be healthy. I want to be able to go, you know, 5 rounds on a heavy bag without being winded as fuck. I want to feel good, you know, taking my shirt off and not worrying about my sides or my stomach. And eventually it will happen. If I really buckle down and eat better and stop binging on shit and stop being, you know, unhealthy with that relationship with food, it'll happen. But today ain't that day, apparently. Oh, I'm probably going to go get Habit. I'm not even fronting. I'm probably going to go get Habit. So do better than me is what I'm saying. All right, next question. So the final answer to that question is feel good about myself. Sure, I'd love to look like, you know, insert male god XYZ, but most importantly, I want to feel good about myself, you know, inside and not care what other people think about how I look. That to me is the ultimate goal. So next question says, how do you build trust within yourself and those around you? And obviously this is referring to, you know, from the perspective of an addict in recovery, possibly newly in recovery. Because that element of trust, it can definitely bring up, you know, a lot of things within ourselves and within others. And the first thing I would say, the most important thing, is to have trust within a higher power. Because there are going to be times in early recovery, you're not going to trust yourself. There are going to be times I didn't trust myself, but I trusted in a power greater than myself. I trusted in the people that were around me in recovery. You know, I trusted that even if I wasn't going to be on my best, you know, thought process, that they were, and that they could help me the same way that I would help them. So developing that loving and caring connection with a higher power, knowing that that is always with you. It is always there, anytime, any place. That connection, that power greater than myself is always there. So using that and developing that first and foremost is massive. And then having those people around me was massive. And then eventually, things just started building and building and building until I had trust in myself. I had faith in myself. I had faith in the program enough that I wasn't worried about, you know, walking down the alcohol aisle in the grocery store. I wasn't worried about, you know, walking by, you know, a bank and being like, oh, I could maybe steal some money. I wasn't thinking about, you know, those type of things because I developed it enough within myself. But that takes time. You know, that takes time and having those people around and knowing the situation and knowing where you are within your recovery. Because sometimes we might think we have we trust ourselves and we get put in the right life circumstances with the right situations, and that shit goes right out the window. Right out the window. So that is in my opinion, it's most important to really develop that connection with a higher power, and then surround yourself with people that you trust and trust you. But then you bring in that element of how do you gain back that trust with others? And that takes a long time, especially depending on the situation. You know, if you're an addict like me, you did, you know, levels of damage to trust that maybe will never be repaired. And that's okay. It sucks, but it's reality. It's life on life's terms. You know, the best way in my recovery that I've been able to restore trust is by doing things, by doing esteemable things, by walking it, like I talk it, by walking recovery. And the more that we do those things, the more other people will see those things. And the more that those people see those things and realize it's not just a phase, it's not just, he's good now, and now he's going to go back to stealing money out of my purse or going back to pawning all my shit. Because when we do these things day after day after day, which, as we always talk about, recovery is a daily exercise. And when we do these things day after day after day, people see that. And there are people in my life that I know will probably never fully trust me again. I understand that. There are people in my life who now 100% are back to trusting me. And both of them are totally acceptable and totally understandable within recovery. Because I know the damage that I've done. I know the things that I've done. And it just takes time. So that's what I would definitely say with that, is it definitely takes time. So that's what we got for this week. We got more questions for next week, but please send over more and more questions. I love having a bunch of questions, so I don't have to beg people on social media to send me questions. Again, if you want to send any questions at all, please contact me at Matthew@CleanAndFilthyPodcast.com or send it over on any social media, and we will get your question answered on air. So we are almost out of time, y'all. But we can't close up without them clean time shout-outs. This is the part of the show where we celebrate various extended lengths of clean time, all of the universally recognized milestones, which are newcomer, which is anybody 29 days or less, 30 days clean, 60 days clean, 90 days clean, 6 months clean, 9 months clean, 1 whole year, 18 months clean, and multiple years clean. But we also like to give shout outs for other big numbers that pop up, because it's nice to get celebrated a little bit. It's nice to be acknowledged for celebrating that clean time. So that's what we do here. If you have a clean time coming up between now and next Tuesday, when this episode, or when our next episode goes live, send it over to me. Please make sure to include your first name and your last initial and how much clean time you are celebrating. You can send it directly off the website or on any social media. So we got a bunch of people today. First and foremost, because the newcomer is the most important person in the meeting, we got 2 newcomers. We got my man Ethan. Well done. And then from Twitter, we got Alia. Well done. Welcome. And then with 60 days clean, we've got Emily O. Well done. And then with 6 months clean, we've got Rogine. Yeah, halfway to that book. And then with 250 days clean, we've got Mike and we've got Oldies. Both of y'all, well done. And then we got another one coming from Twitter. We got Paige with 9 months clean. Well done. And then we got Mark P, also from Twitter, with 1 year clean. And then we've got out in Vegas, Pam A with 500 days clean. Halfway to them quadruple digits. Well done. And then, any addict right here. We got my boy Sky with 2 years clean. Well done. Then we've got Julia with 4 years clean. Well done. And then finally, we've got Ryan L with 4 years clean. Well done, everybody. I love doing clean time. Gets me hype. I love it. So shout out to everybody who picked up clean time today. If you didn't pick up clean time today, don't use and you will. That's literally how this program works. And remember that every day clean is a successful day. So if you have any clean time coming up, make sure to send it over so I can get hype, getting y'all hype. I always say I absolutely love clean time. One of my absolute favorite things about recovery is seeing people celebrated for continuous clean time. So shout out to everybody who picked up clean time today. Well, y'all, we are officially out of time, but another wonderful episode. Thank you all for being here. Again, I couldn't do this without y'all. I can't, we can. Thank you for being a part of my recovery. Again, huge thank you to our episode sponsor, Etc. by Emily. Huge thank you to Alice in Wonderland, Valentino Khan, Mad Decent Records for this amazing song, Anything. Thank you, everybody, for being out there, downloading, subscribing, supporting this product. I love each and every one of you. Even if I don't know you, even if I never meet you, please know that I personally love you. And thank you for being a part of my recovery. We'll be back next Tuesday, 5 p.m. All episodes available for download wherever you consume podcasts from. And I will see you guys next week.
I just wanna